thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today we're going to be making this double flip-flap shutter card. I did make a shutter card a couple of weeks back, which I did a video for. This one is a little bit different in the sense that it has a double. They go in opposite directions, but they are also like a gatefold, so it's something a little bit different today. So these are my sections at the front, and these will open to reveal the actual opposites actually of what was on the front. So that opens like that, and then again this will open to reveal the inside. I can't show you actually the whole section because it's actually, the desk isn't wide enough, but you can see how this comes together and then closes up and closes up again here, and this side will close up and close up again here. It's difficult when you're holding the video. So there you can see. And I've coloured these all using Stampin' Blends, so they're all very subtle. I wanted to use tonal colours that all sort of blended together on this, and I've used a couple of extra stamp sets for things like the greetings and stuff like that. So let's get making. Okay, so today we're going to be using the Snailed It stamp set. I have used this in one of the other videos that I've made recently, which was very vibrant, very bright. So today I'm going to go a little bit more subtle with it, and we're actually going to make a baby card, which I thought would be something just a little bit different, something cute, something nice that we can sort of celebrate. It's a bit of a different card, as you've seen, so I just thought it loaned itself to something like this. So first thing we need to do is we need to cut some card. So I'm going to do this as a baby card, so I don't know what sex the baby's going to be, so I'm going to do pinks and blues so that it could work either way. So my base card is going to be in Seaside Spray. I think this is a really pretty sort of colour to use for a baby, and I'm mixing it with Petal Pink because I think that's quite nice as well. It's quite soft, but it's got a peachy tone to it, but I think actually it looks really nice together. So the first thing we want to do is we want to cut this part into sections. Now our standard A4 card measures just over 29 centimetres, so if we cut it into 10 centimetre sections, then obviously we would only get 2 out of 1 card. So if we cut it at 9.9, we will actually get 3 strips. So I'm going to start with the first one. And number 2. Okay, so we've got 3 strips, currently measuring 21 centimetres by 9.9. So the 9.9 doesn't come into play anymore. That, you know, you don't need to worry about that. So that's just the size that you need. So the next thing I want to do is to cut this at 20 centimetres. So this is just one of these pieces I'm cutting at 20. And then the other 2 pieces, so this is currently 21 by 9.9. I'm going to score it first at 1 centimetre. I'm then going to score it at 11 centimetres. So it's 1 centimetre, then 11, and you'll see we've got 2 squares here, and then we've got this 1 centimetre strip. So I'm just going to repeat that. I always do my 1 centimetre on this side because then it gives it full support here, and then I just flip it around to go to 11 centimetres. Okay, so this is going to be our base card. So this is for a standard DL card or banker's card that we used to make. These were really popular years ago. So this is our envelope. This is just a standard envelope that you would send a letter in here in the UK. So this is what we're going to be, the size we're going to be making. Obviously this is not the envelope I'm going to be using. It's just purely just to show you the size that it is. So what I want to do is I want to fold this in to a zigzag. So I'm folding it back on itself first of all, and then this little 1 centimetre strip is going to fold that way. Okay, so that's one, and I need to repeat that for the other. Just making sure that it's nice and flat. And obviously after using your trimmer you do get this little raised edge, so I'm just going to run my bone folder along those edges at this side just to get rid of that. It just makes it sit flat again. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to bring in my 20cm piece, and I want to apply glue to this 1cm strip on one of my side pieces, and this is going to actually sit on the inside of our card here. Now I'm going to use these strips to add some decoration a little bit later, so you'll see it's actually quite it will be hidden inside, you won't see it, but it's actually a way you can use it for some decoration. So the first thing I want to do is add glue to this strip here. And I want to glue this onto this outside edge. So I'm just going to line it up so that it's nice and square. Okay, and then that's glued into place. As I say, we're going to be covering this, so don't worry too much. Now this one I want to do the same. Now if you stick it right onto that edge, as I did in my original card, you do sometimes find that you get a little gap in the middle. So what I suggest you do is just to line this up so that it closes the gap, and then if we've got any excess on that edge we can just trim it off. Mine's not actually too bad this time, so we'll see how it goes. But it's just a way to get rid of any excess, really. You don't want any excess hanging around. Okay, so again, I'm just going to open that up because then I can see where my edge is. But as I say, I want to make sure that that's lined up in the centre as well, so that I can make sure it's all going to fit really nicely. As you can see, actually, mine's not too bad. It is off slightly, but it's not too bad at all, really. So you can see I just got sort of like 1 millimetre or so, just this side. Just going to make sure that's stuck. And then I'm going to take my scissors just to remove that edge there. So it's only small, so it's easier to do it this way rather than try and trim your card to a certain length, which will differ depending on where your score lines are and how thick your score lines are. Okay, so that is our base card. Now what I want to do is to fill this hole, because obviously we've got this little gap here. So the choice is yours. You can either stick a piece the whole way across, or you can actually make these into a bit of a feature on your card. I'm going to make them into a feature. So this length here is 18 centimetres by 9.9. So I'm going to cut that now into Whisper White. I'm going to cut it at 9.9. And then I want to cut it at 18 centimetres. So I'm going to want to slot this in here, and I want it to be a neat fit in between the gaps. So you may find, because we've had to trim that edge, that you may need to also just trim a fraction. You don't need much, but you want it to sit neatly in that gap. So I'm just going to cut a couple of mil off. It doesn't matter if I cut a bit more than I need, provided that it sticks in that gap, then we're good. And you'll see why shortly. Okay, so that's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that. So first of all, I need to decorate this middle section. So I thought it would be nice just to bring in the mushrooms again, or toadstools I should say, they're not mushrooms. So I'm going to start with those. And I'm using Memento ink because I'm going to be using Stampin' Blends to colour this. I'm just doing that off to one side. So as I say, I want it to keep this quite neutral. I want it to be kept so that it could be for either a girl or a boy. So I'm using some really subtle colours. I'm using Seaside Spray again, Petal Pink again, and I'm also using some Crumb Cake because it's quite neutral for baby. So I'm just going to, on my toadstools, I'm going to do the underneath of these in Crumb Cake. I might add just a little bit down that side actually. And then I'm using my light Stampin' Blend just to pour that colour across. And then finally with my colour lifter, I'm just spreading that colour across so it all blends in just really nicely. So I'm going to do exactly the same for the other stems. And again, finally with the colour lifter, this just helps blend the colours, but it also takes away sort of the harsh edges, so you don't get any kind of horrible edges on the side of it. So you can always go back and add a bit extra if you find that it's not blended quite as you want it. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. Oops, I just realised I have missed underneath this little one here. Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to use these on the front as well. So whatever I do with my mushroom or toadstool, I should say, this time I will do it the opposite on the front. So I think I'm going to do my toadstool in Seaside Spray. So again, I'm just adding my dark colour first. I like to use dark first. Some people use the light first. It's preference to you really. If it doesn't work one way, try it the other, because there's no right or wrong. It's just what you're comfortable with really. I'm just going to put a little bit extra around that side there. Oops. Again, I like to use the thinner ends of my pens. I just find them easier to blend with. I feel that I can get more control. Sometimes with the brush end, although it's useful if you're filling in big areas, they're a little bit harder to control really. So again, just take your time, get the colours to blend together and go over the dark colour that you've put down first, because although it will lighten it, it will actually help to blend. And then once you've got a nice layer of colour down, you can then go in and add a little bit more dark. Just don't do this too quickly. Do give it, you know, a few seconds to evaporate. Okay, if you do find that you get a little bit of bleeding, don't worry about it too much. If you use your colour lifter and just push the colour outwards towards the edge that you've gone over, it's just where it bleeds slightly if you haven't allowed the layers to dry sufficiently. You just want to push that colour back in. Don't do it too much. let it dry, and then you can come back and do it again. So this time I'm going in with my Petal Pink. Now this is quite subtle and it is quite peachy, but I think it's quite nice for a baby card. I don't get to send many baby cards these days. You reach a certain age and it's more likely grandchildren than children. Again, just take your time, just lay the colour down gradually. Notice I'm not really using the colour lifter this time because this colour is quite subtle. You really don't need to be honest. So I've chosen not to use it. I'm going to keep this tonal, so I'm also going to do this sort of ferny in the Petal Pink as well. Just starting with the dark, and again just blend in, not too much with these because I don't mind if it's a bit of a harsher line because it's so subtle anyway. In fact, I'm not even sure if you'll notice it a great deal on the camera. So again, just down the bottom, this is sort of grass, but I'm adding just a bit of the crumb cake just to sort of blend it all in again. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. That's for my inside of my card. I do just want to put a little greeting in here. Now, there's not, it's not really designed for a baby card as such, so there's no real greetings in here that I could use, only the hello would be quite nice. I've also got a little hello baby, which I'm going to use on the outside from the set So Sentimental. But what I thought would be quite nice, I quite like this congrats. I think that's really quite sweet. And there's also I'm glad you were born, which I thought was quite nice, or this calls for a huge celebration. I'm just going to use the congrats on its own in the centre, but there are options there you could use. So let's say I'm just going to stamp this just in the centre. Hopefully I'll get it straight. There we go. So I'm now going to stick this into the centre of my card here. As I say, don't worry if as long as it slots in that centre section, then that's fine. Don't worry if it's a little bit short. I just realised I've got a little mark on my finger. Okay, so as you can see, I've got an annoying little mark that I had some ink just on my nail here. So we need to put something over that, something that's going to cover it. I'm not going to redo it because these things happen. And sometimes it's nice to find ways around them. So I've got this little heart stamp here. So I'm just going to stamp this onto a scrap of Whisper White, again using the Memento ink. And I'm going to colour this in the blue just so it's all tonal. It is annoying when these things happen, but there are generally ways around things. So although it's annoying when it happens on a live recording, it's actually, sometimes it's not such a bad thing because it sort of shows us that we're all human and these things happen. Years ago, I probably would have thrown that in the bin because I would have been annoyed. You learn as time goes on that there's other things to be annoyed about in life. So I'm just cutting this. I'm going to cut it right on the very edge of my heart. It's quite a simple shape to sort of cut, really. And then I'm just going to glue that over my little splodge. So there you go. You'd never ever know. Although you obviously do because you're watching. So the next thing I want to do is I want to cover these little strips here. I want to bring them as part of the actual decoration of the card. So although it's where we've joined it, there's no reason why we can't sort of dress it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself in a second a couple of strips of the Seaside spray. In fact, no, I'm going to do it in a little bit of the Petal Pink because I think that will bring some more pink into this particular section. So I'm going to cut it just over 1 centimetre because those strips are 1 centimetre. So I'm just making it just very slightly larger. And I'm going to just cut that in half at 10.5, and then we can trim it once it's actually on the card itself. So again, I'm using the little heart stamp that I used a second ago. So I'm just going to make sure that's got no ink on it. That's nice and clean. And I'm just going to randomly stamp this onto the Petal Pink piece. I love it when you can bring a stamp set together and you can really sort of use various parts of it to create your finished result. This is a particularly cute little stamp set. I do like this very much. Now, of course, it's up to you, but I'm going to add some additional colour into my hearts. Again, just using my stamping blends just to add that little bit of colour. So now I can just glue those onto these side strips, and I'm going to apply the glue actually to these strips rather than my pink, because I think I have more control over it on here. Now remember, these are a slightly bit longer than I need them to be, so I'm going to line them up at the bottom and hang them over the top, and then I'll just give them a quick trim in a second. See, this one's got a little bent corner, so I'm just going to, actually it's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to trim these extra bits off here. Okay, so that's the centre of our card now ready. So what I want to do is concentrate on the front. So I'm just going to give these another score. I want to make sure that they stick down nicely. Okay, so we're going to concentrate on the front sections. So what I'm going to do is create 2 windows effectively. So I'm going to cut out my actual pieces in Petal Pink. So you're going to need 4 of these squares at 9 centimetres each. So now I want to cut out a window in 2 of my squares, and I want the actual border of my square to be 1.5 centimetres. So I'm going to line this up on 1.5 centimetres, and I'm just going to judge really where that 1.5 centimetres is. It doesn't matter if I'm a little bit under, it doesn't matter if I'm a little bit over. I can adjust it once I've cut it out. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could measure this and use a knife and ruler. That's absolutely fine as well. I'm really doing this for quickness. Okay, so don't worry if you overcut slightly here. This is going to be covered in a second, so don't worry about that. So I want to do the same with the second piece. Okay, so now my windows are cut. I want to place these over the top of those windows, and then I'm going to cut them out again. Now, the reason I'm doing this with 2 layers is because I need it to have a little bit of support. So if we, when I've done some other of these cards, I've actually used the DSP to cover the windows, or the window frames, I should say, and that just gives it a little bit of extra strength. This with the middle cut out of it is actually quite flimsy, and it wouldn't be sufficient to pull our shutter. But first of all, what I want to do is around these edges, I want to randomly stamp some hearts again. Okay, so I'm just going to randomly stamp them. I want to remember that my border is about 1.5 centimetres. Okay, so now that I've stamped around those edges, I'm just going to glue them to the actual frames themselves. So what I'm going to do is actually glue onto the frame, and then I won't have a sticky mess in the middle of my window here. Okay, now that's done, I'm just going to take my knife this time, and I'm just going to run it down the side of that card. And there, hopefully, that just gives it that extra strength, so that's now nice and firm for us to make our mechanism inside. And again, if you wanted to, you could colour these in, but I'm going to leave these ones a little bit more subtle, I think, so I'm going to leave them open. Okay, so that's our 2 frames cut. So if I just bring in the card again, you can see this is where they are going to sit on here, and then our little flip-flap bits are going to be inside there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to create those flip-flap pieces. Okay, so we need to create our little flip-flap pieces that are going to go inside, and you need to cut 4 pieces. Now these are going to measure 9 centimetres, which is the height of our square, and each one needs to be 4 centimetres. But first of all, I'm going to give it a quick score. So on each of these long sides, I'm going to score at 1.5 centimetres. So this was just 21 centimetres. This was the full width of an A4 sheet. I think I'd cut the little piece off the end for the strips inside. So all you need is to make sure that it is 16 centimetres minimum by 9 centimetres high. So that's 1.5 centimetres on either side here. I'm then going to score this at 1 centimetre, I'm then going to move it to 2.5 centimetres, and I want to score just to that first score line there and down to that score line there. I'm a little bit short here, but that's fine because it will fold itself anyway. I've now just turned it around and I'm going to trim that at 4 centimetres. So I'm going to do the same. I'll do it this way so that you can see. So it's 1 centimetre. Then going to move it to 2.5 centimetres. I'm going to score down to that first score line across, and then I'm going to bring this down and score up to that first score line there, and then I'm going to trim it at 4. Okay, so you'll have pieces that look a bit like this, and I need 4 of those, so there's 2 for either side. Okay, so I have 4 of these sections. So if I cut one initially, I'm cutting from this side here, and I want to cut a tiny little notch out just to that first score line. So that's then going to fold over like that. So I'm going to do the same again this side. Trim a little section out just to give it a little notch, fold that over. Now on this side, I want to remove this section here. So I'm going to cut both sides, and then I'm going to cut down that line there. Okay, so it will look like that. So I'm going to do one more. So on where these sections are, I'm going to cut across here and cut a little notch across here and cut a little notch. And then on this side, I actually want to remove this middle section here. And you just repeat that for all 4 pieces. Okay, so now I have all these pieces cut. I now need to attach them to my card front. Okay, so first thing I want to do is just to position my window onto my card front here. And I just want to lightly pencil mark the inner square. I only need the 2 inside edges, so I'm going to repeat that on this side too. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to attach these pieces. So the side that has this notch out is going to line up with the pencil mark. So where this notch line is here, that's where it's going to line up. The next one is going to line up next to it, and it is also going to line up against this pencil line. So you may find at this point that you need to trim just very lightly along one side. Now you won't need to take off much. It literally is sort of a hair's breadth of card, but you'll just find that it will sit so much better by doing this, because what we don't want it to do is to get caught on the side. So just by trimming this tiny little piece, as I say, it's just a tiny little piece, you'll find that it will sit so much better. So I'm going to bring this in, and I want to add glue to just these 2 little pieces here. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to line up this edge with this pencil mark. And I just make sure that I can just see that I've lined that up properly. Okay, so that's the first one in place. I then want to take the second one, so again I'm just gluing onto these little ones here. Okay, now I want to make sure that it's obviously not going to catch, but I also need to make sure that it's going to line up with my pencil mark. So just take care just to make sure of that. Again, if it's going to get a little bit stuck, then by all means trim it. Don't leave it as it is. So can you see that is going to get just that on that top edge, that is going to get stuck. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trim it with a pair of scissors. You can take, if you take your cutting mat and pop it underneath, you'd be able to take a slither off. But I'm quite happy to just snip with my scissors here. We're going to cover this anyway, so if it is slightly wonky, it's not going to matter. But I do want to make sure that it's not going to catch, okay? So that's all stuck in place, and I'm quite happy that that's fine. Now what I want to do is to make sure that it's not going to catch on my frame, because this is the other area that it may catch, is on this top and bottom edge. So you just need to hold it in place and kind of lift the pieces between the window and see if you think it's going to catch. Doesn't seem too bad. Once it's through the hole, that seems fine. You can trim it afterwards, so don't panic too much, but obviously it's more difficult afterwards, so it's best just to sort of check if you can beforehand. So now that that's done, I'm just going to place some glue onto these other pieces here. Now obviously I want to make sure that they are laid backwards as I lay my frame on top. So what I tend to do is to sort of tilt it almost. So make sure they fold in the right direction. Then you can have a little fiddle around with positioning. So just make sure that those folded bits are folded down, because this is what creates your window. Okay, I'm not quite stuck there, I can see. Okay, so as you can see, that is now opening and shutting. So I'm just going to rub out my pencil mark here. Okay, so that's that part. Now what I want to do is to repeat it on the other side, but of course this time I need the shutter to open the other way. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn it up the other way. But if you remember, I did just trim these very lightly. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so remember last time we lined up this line with this line here. So this time we need to flip it on its head. We're still going to glue these sections first, but we want to make sure that this side lines up here. So I'm going to just add some glue to these. I'm going to make sure that that is lined up with my pencil line, which it is, and then when I'm happy, I'm just going to glue those flaps into place. Okay, so I'm going to do the same again. So I want to add my glue onto these sections here. and I want to line it up with my pencil mark, but I also want to make sure that it's fitting in with everything this side, which it is. Oops. So I'm just going to glue those down. Okay, if you find that it is getting a little bit caught, which it might do just sort of at this position here, I'm just going to trim a little section off there. It's better to trim than it gets squashed. Okay, so now that that is done, I'm going to fold back those sections like we did before, and again add some glue. So this time I'm going to start over that side and lean it downwards over the top, and that way you know that they're all sort of stuck inside. Just make sure it's stuck down nicely. Just going to open it up and again make sure it's laid flat. I'll rub out my pencil marks while I'm there. So there we go. So that one is moving quite nicely as well. So what will happen, I don't think the screen is wide enough for me to show you the full effect, but what happens is that you will open these and they will fold back as you open the rest of the card. So I thought it was quite a nice, something a little bit different to make. So the next thing I want to do is to decorate these two pieces here and here. So we're going to need to cut some small squares. So in Whisper White, I am going to cut 4 squares that measure 5.8 centimetres square. Okay, so these are going on the front and the inside of our card. So on one of them I want to stamp again the toadstools. Try not to get ink on me this time. So again I'm just popping it into this side here. And then I also want to stamp the snout. So this is the larger of the 2 snouts, and he's got presents on his back, which are quite cute. I'm just going to stamp him on there like so. And then I also need to think about the decoration for the other side once it flips open. So I thought what I would do is use the same stamps, but I will reverse colours, so it will look like it's sort of changing colour as it flips over. So again I'm just going to stamp the mushrooms, toadstools, I shouldn't call them mushrooms, first. And then the snout. And then if you recall, I mentioned that I wanted to use the little Hello Baby stamp. And this is from So Sentimental. And again, it has a little heart in it, so it sort of works quite well, really. So I'm just going to stamp Hello Baby in these little gaps by the mushrooms. Okay, so now we need to just colour them in. So I'm using exactly the same colours as I did before on the mushrooms, but I will reverse one of them so that it sort of just complements inside. I'm just going to show you quickly how I colour in my snail. So I'm going to be using a seaside spray here, and I want to colour in the same sort of area dark on each of these whirls. And again here I'm just going to add some dark to the centre, kind of work round. I'm then going to add some of the light, and I'm going to go light over the sections that join in the middle as well. And again, as I say, if you want to add a little bit more dark, you can go back and add it. It's better to add it afterwards rather than try and do it all at once. And again, just blend in those edges. Okay, so that's how I would colour his actual shell in. I'm then going to, I'm actually going to colour, because I'm just using the three colours. I'm using Seaside Spray, Petal Pink and Crumb Cake. So I'm going to do the snail's body in Crumb Cake. So I'm using the other two colours just to sort of coordinate them together. So I've got my Petal Pink for the other present. Okay, and then the snail's body. I'm just going to lay down the colour first before I start trying to blend them together. And initially I'm just working on those edges, but then notice I go over the whole area, so that's just helping it just to blend together. going to go back in with a little bit extra dark just to add some more detail to him or her. We're going to do the other one in the opposite colours in a moment. Okay, so that's how I would colour the snail. I'm now going to go ahead and just colour the rest of these in so that they're ready to go in, and then I'll pop back and show you how they go. Okay, so now all the pieces have been coloured, so I'm happy with that. Now what we need to do is to actually glue them to our card itself. So as you recall, this was our inside, so it all colour coordinates really beautifully, so I think it's really sort of quite sweet. Okay, so what I need to do now is to actually chop these in half, which is the hardest bit, I think. Okay, so these are 2.9 centimetres, and I literally need to chop him in half. Just want to make sure that I keep the same halves together, so that they line up perfectly. So actually I'm going to change that because there's a lot of blue in both of those. So in fact we'd know instantly if we'd got the wrong two, wouldn't we, because of the changeover of colour. Okay, so I'm going to have one each of these on the outside and then one each on the inside. So I'm going to start off with the new baby on this side here. So all you need to be careful of is that you do not have anything that's too thick and bulky that's going to prevent opening and shutting of these shutter pieces. So if, for example, you wanted something to be on dimensionals, it is an option. You just need to be sort of careful exactly where you use them, and also you need to cut them before you actually stick them down. So you need to cut them in your pieces in half and then your actual decorations in half before attaching with 3D foam. I'm just going to make sure that that lines up, which it does. So that's our hello baby. Let's say, just if you find that it is getting a little bit stuck at times, you can always go back and trim. So just keep an eye on it. I think you'll find that after time they just sort of they tend not to stick anyway. So I'm going to stick this little snail here onto the other side. Just line him up. There we go. So that's our two outside. So this will be as people will get their card out of their envelope. So these are going to open like this and then open again like this to reveal our centre. So I need to, on the reverse side, I'm going to glue the other snail here. Okay, so that's that side, and then on the reverse of this one. Okay, so there you can see you have got your two pieces. So that's our card sort of complete. If you want to, what you can do is add some little tabs on the side here, which I think is quite a nice little effect, because I think it actually it makes it look like it's sort of, you've got to pull it open, and you could pull on it if you wanted to. So I'm just going to use one of our punches just to cut, it's not quite wide enough, that little strip. I'm just going to cut one of these little tabs. You could use a circle if you've got a circle. You can literally use anything you want to. And I'm just going to cut it in half down the centre, or rough centre. I'm going to glue to this side, and then this is just going to pop underneath here. So again, I just want to make sure that it's not too wide, which that was, and just in the sort of center of the tab. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that obviously glues before I start using it too much. I'm going to trim a bit more off this one. Pop it underneath. You could also tie some ribbon around that section if you wanted to, as I have done on one of the other videos. So here we go. So this opens like that, and then this opens to reveal our inside. So I hope you like that. It's something a little bit different. As I say, you could use any stamp set. You could use paper. You can use decoration from the DSP itself, which is what I did on the original one, which I did on my crafty drop-in, which I'll show you here. So this was just using some of the DSP papers and the Pretty Perennials stamp set. So this one, we use some DSP on the reverse, and then it opens up to a happy birthday. And we use some of the DSP along these strips here as well. So as I say, that just, it covers that join, but it also sort of brings the whole thing together. So I hope you like that. As I say, it's something a little bit different. It is a bit of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.